It looks like everybody is back from special area now, so we can begin. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get Mrs. Mullen off of here as quickly as I can because I want you guys to have time to read the entire chapter and discuss. So here is just my one announcement I have to make for you guys. Due to the state testing tomorrow, there is not going to be a Chapter 17 quiz, and there will not be a Chapter 17 summary writing challenge. For Chapter 17, all we're going to do today is we're going to read the chapter, and we're going to use any time we have for discussion. Okay? And then if tomorrow there is any time in our schedule, we can talk about Chapter 17 some more because this is one of the most exciting chapters in the entire book. So I want us to be able to enjoy the chapter, and we're not going to worry about taking a quiz or writing a summary. Okay? It's all just about us reading and really critically thinking about what we're reading. So all I want you guys to really do is just take good notes for Chapter 17. All right? So Mrs. Mullen, that's my announcement. You guys can see the scoreboard so you guys can see where things stand. We've only got about a week and a half left, guys. So if you're going to make a move to take over the lead, you guys are going to have to work hard in this last week and a half. All right, Mrs. Mullen, do you have any questions for me?
No, we're all set.
Awesome. Enjoy the chapter. All right. So for people in here, Rylan, I saw you had a hand up. What's your question?
Are we going to watch the movie this year?
We are going to be watching the movie. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, you can see I already told you guys to set up your notes. Today, we're going to be reading Chapter 17, and you guys are going to be doing notes and only notes, no quiz and no summary. This is on page 75 of your ELA notebook. Before we begin reading the chapter and before we begin looking at our discussion questions, let's go back and review what happened in the last chapter before we start reading this chapter. So in your notes, flip back to your Chapter 16 notes. Mrs. Holmes and Mrs. Faulkner, are you guys going to stay with me for the reading today, or are you guys going to read independently? All right, that sounds awesome. It's the best way to do it. How about you, Mrs. Holmes?
Yeah, they want to do that independently.
All right, so do a quick review of the last chapter, and then you guys can use my questions as you guys read or when you're done reading. All right, enjoy. Jolene, you can stay on with me and you can read with me. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, take us back to Chapter 16, the Chamber of Secrets. What's going on in the beginning of the chapter with the mandrakes? Michelle? Good. Everybody's about to get cured. They're about to become unpetrified. What do Harry and Ron happen to see, though, in the castle that they were looking for, Parker? Something very specific that a certain character told them to follow. They see the spiders. So, of course, they decide to do what that evening? They decide to do what, Casey? All right, tell me about what happens when they follow the spiders a bit, Jane. Yeah, we're reviewing the last chapter.
No, that was the chapter before that.
Oh, okay. Well, good. We're reviewing back a little further then. All right, I went back a little further. You're right. Okay, so after the spiders, so this is after they already go into the Forbidden Forest and they meet Aragog and they learn everything from Aragog. My bad. So the petrified people are about to wake up. So then you guys tell me what happens next in the chapter. John.
Yeah, it's not that bad. I don't know how to pronounce the name.
You say that a lot. You need to know how to pronounce the names because I've been reading them for 16 chapters now.
Ginny?
Yeah, see, you do know how to say her name. Ginny.
Weasley got petrified.
She did not get petrified.
Well, she got taken into the chamber.
Very good. That's even worse. Ginny got taken into the chamber. Then, Ruth.
Because she knew something about Chamber Secrets, but I forgot what she had.
All right, let's keep the train moving. We want to move. So Ginny's taken, then Frank.
Then Ron and Harry go to find Hermione or see Hermione and they find the paper. Also, the questions on that are for next chapter.
I know. I'm not. These are the ones for today's reading. Those, I'm asking you guys about the last reading.
So then they go to Hermione.
Okay, but who are they gonna go? What teacher is supposed to go find the chamber? I'll go back. Rylan.
You want to run Lockhart?
Good. Harry and Ron go to Lockhart, and what do they find?
He's a fraud.
He is a fraud. He's doing what, Jane?
He's running away.
He's running away. So Harry and Ron decide to do what with him? Ruth, or not Ruth? I meant Sophia.
They take them to the Mary Norris Master, and I actually was gonna say, nobody said it now. The monster is a basilisk.
Good. We learned the monster is a basilisk, and so they are taking Gilderoy to the chamber. They go into the chamber, and what does Gilderoy try to do when they're down in the tunnel? Justina.
He tries to put a memory spell on them.
Very good. And what happens when he tries to do that memory spell, Alicia?
It backfires because he's using Ron's wand, and Ron and Gilderoy get stuck.
Good. They get stuck on one side of a cave-in. And who's on the other side, Alicia?
Harry.
Good. So what does Harry decide to do in this moment, Jane?
He decides to go on and find the chamber and bring them alone.
Very good. He's going on alone into the Chamber of Secrets to find Ginny alone. And that's where we are at with our story. Okay, so here we are. We're at the climax. We're at the final battle. So each person right now, open up your books to chapter 17. It's on page 388. It is titled, The Heir of Slytherin. Okay, and you can see here my notes are. They're ready to go. You guys are still going to do one last vocabulary model. So as we read through this chapter, what do you do with your new, fun, interesting, challenging words, Jasmine? You underline them. Okay, go ahead and underline them. All right, here we go. Chapter 17, The Heir of Slytherin. Guys, a lot of you, as we've been doing our quizzes and we've been writing our summaries, one of the things I've noticed is a lot of the misspellings of words that are in our book. One of them is the word heir. I have seen it spelled so many different ways. However, should this be a word that you would ever misspell? No, why? Sophia?
Because it's in the book.
It's in the book.
Like 1,000 times.
It's in the book. Okay, when you're writing your notes should be spelled correctly because you're taking them right out of the book. You should never misspell heir. I've also seen it where you guys will take a word like Hermione and spell her name in different ways in the same question. And her name may be in an answer, and her name might be in the question. I've seen a lot of that, and that's just careless work. When you take, again, any name, like Dumbledore's a hard one to spell. But you'll spell it like 2 or 3 different ways in a single answer. Pick one, and the one that you should pick is the one that's spelled correctly. The one from the question or the one from the book. Okay, Rylan, let's keep going. What is your question before I begin reading?
I wanted to ask a question because this chapter tells you. Who do you think is the heir of Slytherin?
All right, well, let's read and let's find out. Clearly, that's the question you should have in your head going in. Who's the heir? He was standing at the end of a very long, dimly lit chamber. Towering stone pillars entwined with more carved serpents rose to support a ceiling lost in darkness, casting long black shadows through the odd greenish gloom that filled the place. His heart beating very fast, Harry stood listening to the chill silence. Could the basilisk be lurking in a shadowy corner behind a pillar? And there was Ginny. And where was Ginny? He pulled out his wand and moved forward between the serpentine columns. Every careful footstep echoed loudly off the shadowy walls. He kept his eyes narrowed, ready to clamp them shut at the smallest sign of movement. The hollow eye sockets of the stone snakes seemed to be following him. More than once, with a jolt of the stomach, he thought he saw one stir. Then, as he drew level with the last pair of pillars, a statue high as the chamber itself loomed into view, standing against the back wall. Harry had to crane his neck to look up into the giant face above. It was ancient and monkeyish, with a long, thin beard that fell almost to the bottom of the wizard's sweeping stone robes, where two enormous gray feet stood on the smooth chamber floor. And between the feet, face down, lay a small, black-robed figure with flaming red hair. "Ginny!" Harry muttered, sprinting to her and dropping to his knees. "Ginny, don't be dead! Please, don't be dead!" He flung his wand aside, grabbed Ginny's shoulders, and turned her over. Her face was white as marble and as cold, yet her eyes were closed, so she wasn't petrified. But then she must be... "Ginny, please, wake up!" Harry muttered, desperately shaking her. Ginny's head lolled hopelessly from side to side. "She won't wake," said a soft voice. Okay, everyone write something down in your notes. You guys could write questions. We're going to save our discussion for the end. I think, where is Harry? Who does he find? What does he hear? How creepy is that, though, right?
Yeah.
He's not expecting to hear a voice. He sees Ginny and he says, "Ginny!" And then all of a sudden there's a voice that he's not expecting. "She won't wake," said a soft voice.
That would be like a ghost waking you up.
Harry jumped and spun around on his knees. A tall, black-haired boy was leaning against the nearest pillar, watching. He was strangely blurred around the edges, as though Harry were looking at him through a misted window. But there was no mistaking him. "Tom? Tom Riddle?" Riddle nodded, not taking his eyes off Harry's face. "What do you mean she won't wake?" Harry said desperately. She's not... "She's still alive," said Riddle, "but only just." All right, whose name should you have added to your notes right now? Rylan? Tom Riddle. Tom Riddle is in the chamber. That name needs to be in your notes. Okay, and also, that is something I have noticed as I've looked at a lot of your notes throughout these 16 chapters, is that a lot of you like to use pronouns. You like to do a lot of they this, they that, they this. Okay? You should never be using pronouns like that until you've used the proper noun. Alright? So we could say that someone said she won't wake, because at that point we don't know the person. But as soon as we hear their name, okay, Tom Riddle. These names need to be in your notes spelled correctly. Tom Riddle is the one that is in the chamber with Harry, telling him that she won't wake. And remember, Tom Riddle is the one who, he's the owner of the diary. Okay, so this goes back to Tom Riddle's the one that got the special award for the school, for saving the school from Hagrid. "What do you mean she won't wake?" Harry said, desperately. She's not. She's still alive," said Riddle, "but only just." Harry stared at him. Tom Riddle had been at Hogwarts 50 years ago, yet here he stood, a weird, misty light shining about him. Not a day older than 16. "Are you a ghost?" Harry said uncertainly. "A memory," said Riddle quietly, "preserved in a diary for 50 years. He pointed towards the floor near the statue's giant toes. Lying open, there was the little black diary Harry had found in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. For a second, Harry wondered how it had got there, but there were more pressing matters to deal with. "You've got to help me, Tom," Harry said, raising Ginny's head again. "We've got to get out of here. There's a basilisk. I don't know where it is, but it could be along any moment. Please, help me." Riddle didn't move. Harry, sweating, managed to hoist Ginny half off the floor and bent to pick up his wand again. But his wand had gone. "Did you see?" He looked up. Riddle was still watching him, twirling Harry's wand between his long fingers. "Thanks," said Harry, stretching out his hand for it. A smile curled the corners of Riddle's mouth. He continued to stare at Harry, twirling the wand idly. "Listen," said Harry urgently, his knees sagging with Ginny's dead weight. "We've got to go. If the basilisk comes, it won't come until it is called," said Riddle calmly. Harry lowered Ginny back onto the floor, unable to hold her up any longer. "What do you mean?" he said. "Look, give me my wand. I might need it." Riddle's smile broadened. "You won't be needing it," he said. Harry stared at him. "What do you mean I won't be?" "I've waited a long time for this, Harry Potter," said Riddle. "For the chance to see you, to speak to you." "Look," said Harry, losing patience. "I don't think you get it. We're in the Chamber of Secrets. We can talk later." "We're going to talk now," said Riddle, still smiling broadly, and he pocketed Harry's wand. Harry stared at him. There was something very funny going on here. Okay, take a minute, write something down in your notes. Maybe about Harry's wand.
Can we put that comment on the
Yeah, you can. So you can talk. Harry's asking for help. Is Tom helping him? No. What has Tom done to Harry's wand? Stole it. So Tom has stolen Harry's wand. Harry is now defenseless. All right. You're right. He still has a couple of weapons in his fists and his feet.
Yeah, you can always use Ginny as a human shield.
Page 392, Frank. "How did Ginny get like this?" he asked slowly. "Well, that's an interesting question," said Riddle pleasantly, "and quite a long story. I suppose the real reason Ginny Weasley is like this is because she opened her heart and spilled all her secrets to an invisible stranger." "What are you talking about?" said Harry. "The diary," said Riddle. "My diary. Little Ginny's been writing in it for months and months, telling me all her pitiful worries and woes, how her brothers tease her, how she had to come to school with second-hand robes and books, and how," Riddle's eyes glinted, "how she didn't think famous, good, great Harry Potter would ever like her. All the time he spoke, Riddle's eyes never left Harry's face. There was an almost hungry look in them. "It's very boring having to listen to the silly little troubles of an 11-year-old girl," he went on. "But I was patient. I wrote back. I was sympathetic. I was kind. Ginny simply loved me. No one's ever understood me like you, Tom. I'm so glad I've got this diary to confide in. It's like having a friend I can carry around in my pocket." Riddle laughed, a high, cold laugh that didn't suit him. It made the hairs stand up on the back of Harry's neck. "If I say it myself, Harry, I've always been able to charm the people I needed. So Ginny poured out her soul to me, and her soul happened to be exactly what I wanted. I grew stronger and stronger on a diet of her deepest fears, her darkest secrets. I grew powerful, far more powerful than little Miss Weasley, powerful enough to start feeding Miss Weasley a few of my secrets, to start pouring a little of my soul back into her." "What do you mean?" said Harry, whose mouth had gone very dry. "Haven't you guessed yet?" Harry Potter, said Riddle softly. Ginny Weasley opened the Chamber of Secrets. She strangled the school roosters and daubed threatening messages on the walls. She set the serpent of Slytherin on 4 mudbloods and the squib's cat. No, Harry whispered. Write something down in your notes. I'm really hoping it includes the word Ginny.
And chamber.
If you have a question, you can also write down questions, especially if you're doing a T-chart or a set of Cornell notes. So Riddle is telling Harry that who was it all year long opening the chamber, Destina?
Ginny.
It was Ginny. Ginny is the one that wrote the message. Ginny's the one that strangled the roosters. Ginny is the one that set the monster on these Muggle-born students. It's Ginny. Alright, so that's what he's telling Harry right now. And Harry he says, no, Harry whispered. He didn't shout no. He was more like, no. Harry whispered. Bottom of 393. Yes, said Riddle calmly. Of course, she didn't know what she was doing at first. It was very amusing. I wish you could have seen her new diary entries. Far more interesting they became. Dear Tom, he recited, watching Harry's horrified face. I think I'm losing my memory. There are rooster feathers all over my robes, and I don't know how they got there. Dear Tom, I can't remember what I did on the night of Halloween, but a cat was attacked and I've got paint all down my front. Dear Tom, Percy keeps telling me I'm pale and I'm not myself. I think he suspects me. There was another attack today and I don't know where I was. Tom, what am I going to do? I think I'm going mad. I think I'm the one attacking everyone. Tom. Harry's fists were clenched, the nails digging deep into his palms. It took a very long time for stupid little Ginny to stop trusting her diary, said Riddle. But she finally became suspicious and tries to dispose of it. And that's where you came in, Harry. You found it, and I couldn't have been more delighted. Of all the people who could have picked it up, it was you, the very person I was most anxious to meet. And why did you want to meet me? Said Harry. Anger was coursing through him, and it was an effort to keep his voice steady. Well, you see, Ginny told me all about you, Harry, said Riddle. Your whole fascinating history. His eyes roved over the lightning scar on Harry's forehead, and their expression grew hungrier. I knew I must find out more about you, talk to you, meet you if I could. So I decided to show you my famous capture of that great oaf Hagrid to gain your trust. Hagrid's my friend, said Harry, his voice now shaking. And you framed him, didn't you? I thought you made a mistake, but... Riddle laughed his high laugh again. It was my word against Hagrid's, Harry. Well, you can imagine how it looked to old Armando Dippet. On the one hand, Tom Riddle, poor but brilliant, parentless but so brave, school prefect, model student. On the other hand, big blundering Hagrid, in trouble every other week, trying to raise werewolf cubs under his bed, sneaking off to the Forbidden Forest to wrestle trolls. But I admit, even I was surprised how well the plan worked. I thought someone must realize that Hagrid couldn't possibly be the heir of Slytherin. It had taken me 5 whole years to find out everything I could about the Chamber of Secrets and to discover the secret entrance, as though Hagrid had the brains or the power. Only the Transfiguration teacher, Dumbledore, seemed to think Hagrid was innocent. He persuaded Dippet to keep Hagrid and train him as gamekeeper. Yes, I think Dumbledore might have guessed. Dumbledore never seemed to like me as much as the other teachers did. I bet Dumbledore saw right through you, said Harry, his teeth gritted. All right, you guys should write something down in your notes, because again, we've been led to believe many different things about Hagrid. What was just told to us or shared with us from Tom? All right, Sophia.
Tom framed Hagrid.
Tom framed Hagrid. All right, so Hagrid was innocent. So he confirmed what he learned from Aragog. Aragog said Hagrid was innocent. It wasn't him. And now in this chapter, Tom is saying, I framed Hagrid.
Yeah, and I think the reason why Tom telling all this to Harry is because he wants him to have it.
What's that?
I think that Tom is going to do something really.
Okay. Well, it's like the supervillain soliloquy, right?
Yeah.
Monologuing, and the supervillain always has to monologue before they kill the superhero, which gives the superhero just enough time to come up with a plan to defeat the supervillain. All right, I'll just keep reading. All right, I am on page 395. Yes, only the Transfiguration teacher, Dumbledore. All right, I bet Dumbledore saw right through you. Yes, Parker? Yes. Said Harry with his gritted teeth. Well, he certainly kept an annoyingly close watch on me after Hagrid was expelled, said Riddle carelessly. I knew it wouldn't be safe to open the chamber again while I was still at school, but I wasn't going to waste those long years I'd spent searching for it. I decided to leave behind a diary, preserving my 16-year-old self in its pages, so that one day, with luck, I would be able to lead another in my footsteps and finish Salazar Slytherin's noble work. Well, you haven't finished it, said Harry triumphantly. No one's died this time, not even the cat. In a few hours, the Mandrake draft will be ready, and everyone who is petrified will be all right again. Haven't I already told you, said Riddle quietly, that killing mudbloods doesn't matter to me anymore? For many months now, my new target has been you. Harry stared at him. Imagine how angry I was when the next time my diary was opened, it was Ginny who was writing to me, not you. She saw you with the diary, you see, and panicked. What if you found out how to work it? And I repeated all her secrets to you. What if, even worse, I told you who'd been strangling roosters? So the foolish little brat waited until your dormitory was deserted and stole it back. But I knew what I must do. It was clear to me that you were on the trail of Slytherin's heir. From everything Ginny had told me about you, I knew that you would go to any lengths to solve the mystery, particularly if one of your best friends was attacked. And Ginny had told me the whole school was buzzing because you could speak Parseltongue. All right, so who was it that stole the diary?
Ginny.
It was Ginny. Ginny was the one who stole the diary. You know what I'm wondering about? How did Ginny get the diary? Where did this diary come from? We'll learn in the last chapter, guys. But regardless, we don't know. We do not know where the diary came from.
Well, first of all, the diary
Okay.
started off at Tom Riddle and then it went to Ginny. So.
Right. We don't know how it went from Tom Riddle to Ginny. All right, what's your question, Sophia, or your comment?
Technically, it was Ginny who wrote on a wall and like petrified all those people.
Right.
It was like Tom possessing himself.
Right. And we see that right here in the next sentence. So I made Ginny write her own farewell on the wall and come down here to wait. So again, he's controlling her. She struggled and cried and became very boring, but there isn't much life left in her. She put too much into the diary, into me, enough to let me leave its pages at last. I have been waiting for you to appear since we arrived here. I knew you'd come. I have many questions for you, Harry Potter. Like what? Harry spat, fists still clenched. Well, said Riddle, smiling pleasantly, How is it that you, a skinny boy with no extraordinary magical talent, managed to defeat the greatest wizard of all time? How did you escape with nothing but a scar, while Lord Voldemort's powers were destroyed?" There was an odd red gleam in his hungry eyes now. "Why do you care how I escaped?" said Harry slowly. "Voldemort was after your time." "Voldemort," said Riddle softly, "is my past, present, and future, Harry Potter." He pulled Harry's wand from his pocket and began to trace it through the air, writing 3 shimmering words: Tom, Marvolo, Riddle. Then he waved the wand once, and the letters of his name rearranged themselves. "I am Lord Voldemort."
Oh my God. He is
Good, Michelle's writing in her notes.
But my question
Tom Riddle is really Lord Voldemort. I'll keep reading.
yeah, Professor Crow.
You see, he whispered. It was a name I was already using at Hogwarts, to my most intimate friends only, of course. You think I was going to use my filthy Muggle father's name forever? I, in whose veins runs the blood of Salazar Slytherin himself through my mother's side? I keep the name of a foul common Muggle who abandoned me even before I was born? Just because he found out his wife was a witch? No, Harry. I fashioned myself a new name, a name I knew wizards everywhere would one day fear to speak when I had become the greatest sorcerer in the world. 1 second. Harry's brain seemed to have jammed. He stared numbly at Riddle, at the orphaned boy who had grown up to murder Harry's own parents, and so many others. At last, he forced himself to speak. "You're not," he said, his quiet voice full of hatred. Oh, let's go back and reread that, because he says it quietly. "You're not," he said, his quiet voice full of hatred. "Not what?" snapped Riddle. "Not the greatest sorcerer in the world," said Harry, breathing fast. "Sorry to disappoint you and all that, but the greatest wizard in the world is Albus Dumbledore. Everyone says so. Even when you were strong, you didn't dare try to take over at Hogwarts. Dumbledore saw through you when you were at school, and he still frightens you now, wherever you're hiding these days." The smile had gone from Riddle's face to be replaced by a very ugly look. "Dumbledore's been driven out of this castle by the mere memory of me," he hissed. "He's not as gone as you may think," Harry retorted. He was speaking at random, wanting to scare Riddle, wishing rather than believing it to be true. Riddle opened his mouth but froze. Music was coming from somewhere. Riddle whirled around to stare down the empty chamber. The music was growing louder. It was eerie, spine-tingling, unearthly. It lifted the hair on Harry's scalp and made his heart feel as though it was swelling to twice its normal size. Then, as the music reached such a pitch that Harry felt it vibrating inside his own ribs, flames erupted at the top of the nearest pillar. A crimson bird, the size of a swan, had appeared, piping its weird music to the vaulted ceiling. It had a glittering golden tail as long as a peacock, and gleaming golden tail ends, which were gripping a ragged bundle. A second later, the bird was flying straight at Harry. It dropped the ragged thing it was carrying at his feet, then landed heavily on his shoulder. As it folded its great wings, Harry looked up and saw it had a long, sharp golden beak and a beady black eye. The bird stopped singing. It sat still and warm next to Harry's cheek, gazing steadily at Riddle. "That's a phoenix," said Riddle, staring shrewdly. back at it. Fox, Harry breathed, and he left the bird's golden claws squeeze his shoulder gently. All right, pause for a second, and you guys should write something down. And here I do have a question for you guys. Why did Tom change his name? Why did Tom change his name? Piper?
He changed his name because he didn't want to have the same name as his father.
He did not want to have the same name as his father. If you go back to that paragraph on page 398, he says this. You think I was going to use my filthy Muggle father's name forever? I, who in whose veins runs the blood of Salazar Slytherin himself through my mother's side, I keep the name of a foul, common Muggle who abandoned me before I was born just because he found out his wife was a witch? No! How do you think he feels about his father? Which is where I want Piper and you guys to think about. Because yes, it's because he didn't want to have his father's last name. But why, Michelle?
Because he hates his father.
Thank you. I think this is one of the most important little paragraphs in the entire series. We would not have this series, Harry Potter and the whatever, if Tom's dad just stuck around. Parker?
I think maybe why he hates muggles so much, he's killing muggles, is because his father was a muggle.
And his father left him, abandoned him, never loved him.
I think he thinks all muggles are the same.
Do we have any Star Wars fans? You know Yoda's famous saying? Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to the dark side. You think that maybe Tom Riddle did all the stuff that he ended up doing because of what happened to him when he was a small child? I'm not again. I love this idea of talking about Tom Riddle and his father and what motivates him to do all of the harmful, awful things that he does because of what happened to him when he was a child. Let's come back to this idea because I don't want to run out of time with reading, and this is a long chapter. But I put a big box around that paragraph. I'm going to put a couple stars. I want to come back and I want to talk a little bit about Tom as well, because he is our main villain. And it would be important for us to go back and look at our villain and try to understand why Voldemort is the way he is. And again, I do think that this paragraph is a very important one in trying to understand him as a character. All right, I'm on page 400, right? Yes. Page 400. And that, said Riddle, not eyeing the ragged thing that Fawkes had dropped, that's the old Sorting Hat. So it was, patched, frayed, and dirty. The hat lay motionless at Harry's feet. Riddle began to laugh again. He laughed so hard that the dark chamber rang with it, as though 10 Riddles were laughing at once. This is what Dumbledore sends his defender? A songbird and an old hat? Do you feel brave, Harry Potter? Do you feel safe now? Harry didn't answer. He might not see what use Fawkes or the Sorting Hat were, but he was no longer alone, and he waited for Riddle to stop laughing with his courage mounting. To business, Harry, said Riddle, still smiling broadly. Twice in your past, in my future, we have met, and twice I failed to kill you. How did you survive? Tell me everything. The longer you talk, he added softly, the longer you stay alive. Harry was thinking fast, weighing his chances. Riddle had the wand. He, Harry, and Fawkes, and the Sorting... Harry, had Fawkes and the Sorting Hat, neither of which would be good in a duel. It looked bad, all right, But the longer Riddle stood there, the more life was dwindling out of Ginny. And in the meantime, Harry noticed suddenly Riddle's outline was becoming clearer, more solid. If it had to be a fight between him and Riddle, better sooner than later. "No one knows why you lost your powers when you attacked me," said Harry abruptly. "I don't know myself, but I know why you couldn't kill me. Because my mother died to save me. My common muggle-born mother," he added, shaking with suppressed rage. "She stopped you killing me, and I've seen the real you. I saw you last year. You're a wreck. You're barely alive. That's where all your power got you. You're in hiding. You're ugly. You're foul." Riddle's face contorted. Then he forced it into an awful smile. "So, your mother died to save you. Yes, that's a powerful countercharm. I can see now there is nothing special about you after all. I wondered, you see. There are strange likenesses between us after all. Even you must have noticed. Both half-bloods, orphans, raised by muggles, probably the only two Parselmouths to come to Hogwarts since the great Slytherin himself. We even look something alike. But after all, it was merely a lucky chance that saved you from me. That's all I wanted to know." So again, why, this is important to add in our notes, why does Tom, or Voldemort, why does he want to talk to Harry? What's the main thing he wants to find out? Jasmine?
Why he survived.
Yeah, how did you survive? How did you survive me? Twice I tried to kill you, and you've survived me twice. How? How did you survive me? Add it to your notes if it's not in there. And what is the thing that saved Harry? It's one word. One word. John.
Counterspell.
What? I said one word. One word saved him. Jane. Love. Love saved Harry. You can say something. I've got a lot of pages still left to read, though.
How Harry is pureblood. When it says that.
Harry's not a pureblood. He's not a pureblood. He's a half-blood. Harry's never been said to be a pureblood. Ron's a pureblood, meaning his mom is all witch, his dad is all wizard, like throughout their entire side. All right. Harry's mom was born a muggle. She was raised in a muggle house. So she learned she was a witch at the age of 11. And Harry's dad he grew up in a wizard home. Does that make sense? So Harry's not a pureblood. Ron is a pureblood. Harry would be a half-blood. And Hermione would be a mudblood. Or a witch that was born of a wizard.
I was just wondering if it said not coming muggle-born mom.
Yeah. And so the heir of Slytherin is also a half-blood. Half-blood. His mom, and again, think about why did his dad leave? His dad was a muggle. His dad left because his mom was a what? A witch. Or, yeah. All right, let's keep reading. We'll come back to all of these conversations here at the end. I want to make sure we get through the reading. Okay, so the very top of 402. That's all I wanted to know. Harry stood, tense, waiting for Riddle to raise his wand. But Riddle's twisted smile was widening again. "Now, Harry, I'm going to teach you a little lesson. Let's match the powers of Lord Voldemort, heir of Salazar Slytherin, against famous Harry Potter and the best weapons Dumbledore can give him." He cast an amused eye over Fawkes and the Sorting Hat, then walked away. Harry, fear spreading up his numb legs, watched Riddle stop between the high pillars and look up into the stone face of Slytherin, high above him in the half-darkness. Riddle opened his mouth wide and hissed, but Harry understood what he was saying. "Speak to me, Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts Four." Harry wheeled around to look up at the statue, Fawkes swaying on his shoulder. Slytherin's gigantic stone face was moving. Horror struck. Harry saw his mouth opening, wider and wider to make a huge black hole. And something was stirring inside the statue's mouth. Something was slithering up from its depths. Harry backed away until he hit the dark chamber wall, and as he shut his eyes tight, he felt Fawkes's wings sweep his cheek as he took flight. Harry wanted to shout, "Don't leave me!" But what chance did a phoenix have against the king of serpents? Something huge hit the stone floor of the chamber. Harry felt it shudder. He knew what was happening. He could sense it, could almost see the giant serpent uncoiling itself from Slytherin's mouth. Then he heard Riddle's hissing voice. "Kill him!" The basilisk was moving towards Harry. He could hear its heavy body slithering heavily across the dusty floor, eyes still tightly shut. Harry began to run blindly, sideways, his hands outstretched, feeling his way. Voldemort was laughing. Harry tripped. He fell hard onto the stone and tasted blood. The serpent was barely feet from him. He could hear it coming. There was a loud, explosive spitting sound right above him, and then something heavy hit Harry so hard that he was smashed into the wall. Waiting for the fangs to sink through his body, he heard more mad hissing, something thrashing wildly off the pillars. Okay, add into your notes. What's the snake doing now? He is attacking Harry. So Harry is being attacked by the snake. Can Harry open his eyes? No.
Because if he does, he'll die instantly.
Okay.
By looking in his eyes.
So Harry has to. Let's just cover the things that Harry needs to. Hold on. Let's cover the things Harry needs to do right now. Okay. First that Harry needs to do is he's got to have to kill the what? The serpent, the basilisk, with his eyes closed, with no wand. Okay. He also has to take care of Tom Riddle or Lord Voldemort, and he's got to save Ginny's life and get out of the chamber with no wand.
This is interesting, really.
Okay, I'm on 403. The pill. Okay, he couldn't help it. He opened his eyes wide enough to squint at what was going on. The enormous serpent, bright, poisonous, green, thick as an oak trunk, had raised itself high in the air, and its great blunt head was weaving drunkenly between the pillars. As Harry trembled, ready to close his eyes if it turned, he saw what had distracted the snake. Fawkes was soaring around its head, and the basilisk was snapping furiously at him with fangs long and thin as sabers. Fawkes dived. His long golden beak sank out of sight, and a sudden shower of dark blood spattered the floor. The snake's tail thrashed, narrowly missing Harry, and before Harry could shut his eyes, it turned. Harry looked straight into its face and saw that its eyes, both its great bulbous yellow eyes, had been punctured by the phoenix. Blood was streaming to the floor, and the snake was spitting in agony. "No!" Harry heard Riddle screaming. "Leave the bird! Leave the bird! The boy is behind you. You can still smell him. Kill him." Okay, add into your notes. Again, there's going to be lots of these little details. What does Fawkes do to the snake's eyes? Parker? Good. So now at least Harry has the use of his own eyes. He doesn't have to be worried about being petrified or being instantly killed like Myrtle. The blinded serpent swayed, confused, still deadly. Fawkes was circling its head, piping his eerie song, jabbing here and there at its scaly nose as the blood poured from its ruined eyes. "Help me! Help me!" Harry muttered wildly. "Someone! Anyone!" The snake's tail whipped across the floor again. Harry ducked. Something soft hit his face. The basilisk had swept the sorting hat into Harry's arms. Harry seized it. It was all he had left, his only chance. He rammed it onto his head and threw himself flat onto the floor as the basilisk's tail swung over him again. Help me, Harry thought. His eyes screwed tight under the hat. Please help me. There was no answering voice. Instead, the hat contracted as though an invisible hand was squeezing it very tightly. Something very hard and heavy thudded onto the top of Harry's head, almost knocking him out. Stars winking in front of his eyes. He grabbed the top of the hat to pull it off and felt something long and hard beneath it. A gleaming silver sword had appeared inside the hat, its handle glittering with rubies the size of eggs. Kill the boy, leave the bird. The boy is behind you. Sniff, smell him. Okay, Harry now has a what?
Sword.
He's got a sword. Who gave him the sword? The hat. Okay, put it in your notes.
I was about to say Dumbledore first. That didn't make sense.
Mom, Dumbledore is smart.
Harry was on his feet, ready. The basilisk's head was falling, its body coiling around, hitting pillars as it twisted to face him. He could see the vast, bloody eye sockets, see the mouth stretching wide, wide enough to swallow him whole, lined with fangs, long as his sword, thin, glittering, venomous. It lunged blindly. Harry dodged and it hit the chamber wall. It lunged again, and its forked tongue lashed Harry's side. He raised the sword in both his hands. The basilisk lunged again, and this time its aim was true. Harry threw his whole weight behind the sword and drove it to the hilt into the roof of the serpent's mouth. But as warm blood drenched Harry's arm, he felt a searing pain just above his elbow. One long, poisonous fang was sinking deeper and deeper into his arm, and it splintered as the basilisk keeled over sideways and fell, twitching to the floor. Harry slid down the wall. He gripped the fang that was spreading poison through his body and wrenched it out of his arm, but he knew it was too late. White-hot pain was spreading slowly and steadily from the wound, even as he dropped the fang and watched his own blood soaking in his robes. His vision went foggy. The chamber was dissolving in a whirl of dull color. All right, what did Harry just do to the snake?
Killed it.
Good. Harry kills the snake.
And then he gets like one of those.
Don't say one of those. The exact word is in your book. But in killing the snake, Harry gets pierced by a fang. And right now, what is Harry doing? He is dying. Harry is dying in this moment. Yes, Jane?
But what about the fall?
You mean the Phoenix?
Yes.
What about the Phoenix? What about Fox the Phoenix?
Back when we first saw the Phoenix, we learned that it has healing powers.
Okay. So
What if Fox is?
we'll have to wait and see. But we do know that Harry has killed the snake. Tom is still there somewhere. Ginny is still there somewhere. And Harry is dying. Page 406. A patch of scarlet swam past, and Harry heard a soft clatter of claws beside him. Fox, said Harry thickly. You were fantastic, Fox. He felt the bird lay its beautiful head on the spot where the serpent's fang had pierced him. He could hear echoing footsteps, and then a dark shadow moved in front of him. You're dead, Harry Potter, said Riddle's voice above him. Dead. Even Dumbledore's bird knows it. Do you see what he's doing, Potter? He's crying. Harry blinked. Fox's head slid in and out of focus. Thick, pearly tears were trickling down the glossy feathers. I'm gonna sit here and watch you die, Harry Potter. Take your time. I'm in no hurry. Harry felt drowsy. Everything around him seemed to be spinning. So ends the famous Harry Potter, said Riddle's distant voice. Alone in the Chamber of Secrets, forsaken by his friends, defeated at last by the Dark Lord he so unwisely challenged. You'll be back with your dear mudblood mother soon, Harry. She bought you 12 years of borrowed time, but Lord Voldemort got you in the end, as you knew he must. If this is dying, thought Harry, it's not so bad. Even the pain was leaving him. But was this dying? Instead of going black, the chamber seemed to be coming back into focus. Harry gave his head a little shake, and there was Fawkes, still resting his head on Harry's arm. A pearly patch of tears was shining all around the wound, except that there was no wound. Get away, bird, said Riddle's voice suddenly. Get away from him, I said. Get away! Harry raised his head. Riddle was pointing Harry's wand at Fawkes. There was a bang like a gun, and Fawkes took flight again in a whirl of gold and scarlet. Phoenix tears, said Riddle quietly, staring at Harry's arm. Of course, healing powers. I forgot. He looked into Harry's face. But it makes no difference. In fact, I prefer it this way. Just you and me, Harry Potter. You and me. Okay, you guys should add into your notes what saved Harry. So, Jane, what was it? Very good. It was Fawkes. It was the healing tears of Fawkes. So, yes, Jocelyn? We're at the top of page 408. So, now thinking about Harry's task. Before he had to, kill a snake, do it while he was blindfolded, defeat Tom, save Ginny, get out of the chamber and all that. Okay? We've at least accomplished something so far, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what's he taking care of so far? John?
Basilisk.
Okay, he's killed the basilisk. That does not mean, though, that his task that lays before him is still easy. Okay? He has quite a challenging task in front of him. And I don't know how you can kill a memory. All right? But that's what Tom is. Tom is a memory. He's not a ghost. Yes?
Well, how can a memory kill Harry?
It's a good question. He's becoming, because we do know that somehow it's the magical world. So the magic is pulling the life out of Ginny, and the life is going into Tom. So while Ginny is slowly dying, Tom is slowly getting stronger and stronger. So when Tom is fully alive again, Ginny will be fully dead. So that's kind of what we're up against here with Harry. Michelle?
So, if Harry ends up killing Tom, will Ginny get all of her life back?
It's a good question.
I just thought of that.
Sophia, do you have something before we read? We've got about 4 pages left.
Yeah, I think that Tom or Voldemort is doing is his plan is to lure Harry to try to save Ginny, but instead of that he's gonna drain the power of Ginny, and then once he's fully human, then he'll kill him because he can't kill him unless you're fully human.
And right now, Harry has no wand still.
Yeah.
No wand. All right, Michelle.
So, is Ginny or Tom the heir of Slytherin? I'm so confused on that.
Tom is the heir of Slytherin. Tom revealed he's the heir of Slytherin. In that page, he has Salazar Slytherin's blood through his mother's side.
So, Tom is the heir.
Yes, you think I was going to... And so, yes, Tom is the heir of Slytherin. And he has been controlling Ginny. He's been possessing Ginny to do all of the work. Because, again, up to this point, he is a memory and a diary. So, somehow, and again, in the magic world, he's using magic to control Ginny and get Ginny to do all of these things.
Well, I
Okay, so he is the heir of Slytherin. Let's keep reading, and then we'll have time to talk. We only have 4 pages left in this chapter. So I'm on the top of page 408. Okay, he goes, I prefer it this way. Just you and me, Harry Potter. You and me. This is where he's going to need his fist, Frank.
But he has the sword.
Okay, he's going to use a sword now, okay? He's been upgraded. He's got a sword. So we have a sword versus a wand. He raised the wand. Then, in a rush of wings, Fawkes had soared back overhead, and something fell into Harry's lap. The diary. For a split second, both Harry and Riddle, wand still raised, stared at it. Then, without thinking, without considering, as though he had meant to do it all along, Harry seized the basilisk fang on the floor next to him and plunged it straight into the heart of the book. There was a long, dreadful, piercing scream. Ink spurted out of the diary in torrents, streaming over Harry's hands, flooding the floor. Riddle was writhing and twisting, screaming and flailing, and then he had gone. Harry's wand fell to the floor with a clatter, and there was silence. Silence except for the steady drip, drip of ink still oozing from the diary. The basilisk venom had burned a sizzling hole right through it. Shaking all over, Harry pulled himself up. His head was spinning as though he'd just traveled miles by Floo powder. Slowly, he gathered together his wand and the sorting hat, and with a huge tug, retrieved the glittering sword from the roof of the basilisk's mouth. All right, jot down quickly in your notes how Harry kills Tom. Parker, how does Harry kill Tom? I know, I'm asking you what they're writing.
He killed him by stabbing him with the basilisk. Or no, he killed him by stabbing the diary with the basilisk.
He stabs the diary where the memory is, or the memory lives. He stabs the diary with the basilisk fang. Right? Then came a faint moan from the end of the chamber. Ginny was stirring. As Harry hurried toward her, she sat up. Her bemused eyes, bemused is a good word to underline, hopefully you guys have remembered to do that. Her bemused eyes traveled from the huge form of the dead basilisk over Harry in his blood-soaked robes, then to the diary in his hand. She drew a great shuddering gasp, and tears began to pour down her face. Harry! Oh, Harry! I tried to tell you at breakfast, but I couldn't say it in front of Percy. It was me, Harry, but I swear I didn't mean to. Riddle made me. He took me over. And how did you kill that thing? Where's Riddle? The last thing I remember is him coming out of the diary. It's all right, said Harry, holding up the diary and showing Ginny the fang hole. Riddle is finished. Look, him and the basilisk. Come on, Ginny, let's get out of here. I'm gonna be expelled, Ginny wept as Harry helped her awkwardly to her feet. I've looked forward to coming to Hogwarts ever since Bill came, and now I'll have to leave. And what'll Mom and Dad say? Fawkes was waiting for them, hovering in the chamber entrance. Harry urged Ginny forward. They stepped over the motionless coils of the dead basilisk, through the echoing gloom, and back into the tunnel. Harry heard the stone doors close behind them with a soft hiss. After a few minutes, progress up the dark tunnel, a distant sound of slowly shifting rock reached Harry's ears. Ron! Harry yelled, speeding up. Ginny's okay! I've got her! He heard Ron give a strangled cheer, and they turned the next bend to see his eager face staring through the sizable gap he had managed to make in the rock fall. Ginny! Ron thrust an arm through the gap in the rock to pull her through first. You're alive! I don't believe it. What happened? How? What? Where did the bird come from? Fawkes had swooped through the gap after Ginny. He's Dumbledore's, said Harry, squeezing through himself. How come you've got a sword? Said Ron, gaping at the glittering weapon in Harry's hand. I'll explain when we get out of here, said Harry with a sideways glance at Ginny, who was crying harder than ever. But later, Harry said shortly. He didn't think it was a good idea to tell Ron yet who'd been opening the chamber. Not in front of Ginny, anyway. Where's Lockhart? Back there, said Ron, still looking puzzled, but jerking his head up the tunnel toward the pipe. He's in a bad way. Come and see. Led by Fawkes, whose wide scarlet wings emitted a soft golden glow in the darkness, they walked all the way back to the mouth of the pipe. Gilderoy Lockhart was sitting there, humming placidly to himself. His memory is gone, said Ron. The memory charm backfired. Hit him instead of us. Hasn't got a clue who he is, or where he is, or who we are. I told him to come and wait here. He's a danger to himself. All right, you guys should add something to your notes about, again, Ginny and Lockhart. I would be putting something in there about Ginny, and I'd add something about Lockhart. Yes, Jocelyn?
I don't have any room on my other page. Since we're not doing a summary, can I
Yeah. Michelle?
I need more sticky notes.
Here, you stay there. I'm going to toss. You ready? Oh, that was such a bad toss.
It was like flying in the air.
Maybe come to PE class next time.
Maybe. All right, we're almost done here with the chapter. And again, I would something to do with when Voldemort died. What happened to Ginny? She woke up. Okay, so with the death of Tom, Ginny wakes up, and they go back to Ron, and they find out that Lockhart's memory is gone. Okay, his spell backfired completely. And now he doesn't know who he is. All right, page 411. He's a danger to himself. Lockhart peered good-naturedly up at them all. Hello, he said. Odd sort of place this is, isn't it? Do you live here? No, said Ron, raising his eyebrows at Harry. Harry bent down and looked up at the long, dark pipe. Have you thought how we're going to get back up this? He said to Ron. Ron shook his head, but Fawkes the Phoenix had swooped past Harry and was now fluttering in front of him, his beady eyes bright in the dark. He was waving his long golden tail feathers. Harry looked uncertainly at him. He looks like he wants you to grab hold, said Ron, looking perplexed. But you're much too heavy for a bird to pull up there. Fawkes, said Harry, isn't an ordinary bird. He turned quickly to the others. We've got to hold on to each other. Ginny, grab Ron's hand. Professor Lockhart? He means you, said Ron sharply to Lockhart. You hold Ginny's other hand. Harry tucked the sword and the sorting hat into his belt. Ron took hold of the back of Harry's robes, and Harry reached out and took hold of Fawkes' strangely hot tail feathers. An extraordinary lightness seemed to spread through his whole body, and the next second, in the rush of wings, they were flying upward through the pipe. Harry could hear Lockhart dangling below him, saying, Amazing! Amazing! This is just like magic! The chill air was whipping through Harry's hair, and before he'd stopped enjoying the ride, it was over. All four of them were hitting the wet floor of Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, and as Lockhart straightened his hat, the sink that had hid the pipe was sliding back into place. Myrtle goggled at them. You're alive? She said blankly to Harry. There's no need to sound so disappointed, he said, grimly, wiping flecks of blood and slime off of his glasses. Oh, well, I'd just been thinking, if you had died, you'd have been welcome to share my toilet, said Myrtle, blushing silver. Oh, said Ron, as they left the bathroom for the dark, deserted corridor outside. Harry, I think Myrtle's grown fond of you. You've got competition, Ginny. But tears were still flooding silently down Ginny's face. Where now? Said Ron with an anxious look at Ginny. Harry pointed. Fawkes was leading the way, glowing gold along the corridor. They strode after him, and moments later, found themselves outside Professor McGonagall's office. Harry knocked and pushed the door open. Okay, add your final details to your notes. I want to
We
get,
have discussion questions.
and now we do. We'll use the rest of the time today to do our discussion questions.
I like discussion.
Yeah. Lunch.
Just like yourself.
If you guys are familiar with the hardcover books,
That's the Phoenix right there.
you'll notice that on the cover of the book, it's a little hard to see. I'm going to try to. Alright, we have Fawkes the Phoenix, Harry holding on to the Phoenix's tail. But then again, as you open the cover up and you look, here you have Ron, and then there you have Ginny, and then behind Ginny, you would have Lockhart, but he's not on there. You literally have the scene at the end of that chapter. That's the book cover. For the hardcover book, this is the original book cover. This is the scene that we just read with Fawkes the Phoenix flying them out of the Chamber of Secrets. And you'll notice Harry's got the sword right there. He's got the sword.
So is Fox a girl or is it boy?
I don't think so. Yeah, because he dies and then he's born of the ashes. So let's go over some of the questions and some of the questions that you guys have and some of the questions that I have for us. So first, let's just go ahead and begin. Can you guys describe the Chamber of Secrets? Because in the start of the chapter, yes. Okay, but the more specific.
Oh, well, it's like a big, like, kind of like cave area, kind of like pipes from, and it's got like pillars and snakes and stuff, like snake carvings and sculptures and stuff.
Good. It's this big cavern with all these pillars with snake carvings, and snake pillars, and then what's
And
the
then the huge statue of Salazar Slytherin.
good with a huge giant statue of Salazar Slytherin. Who did Tom Riddle use to kill the roosters, paint messages on the wall, and set the basilisk on the students? Jane? Ginny. What did Tom do to Ginny? Michelle?
Pretty much took over her body.
Yes, he possessed her. Now, again, remember, what did he do? He possessed her and made her go down into the chamber. If you were Harry, how would this news about Ginny affect you? Okay, when you're down there, Tom is telling Harry all this stuff about Ginny. Ginny's the one that killed the roosters. Ginny's opened the chamber. Ginny wrote the messages on the walls. Ginny is the one that set the monster loose. So if you were Harry, how would this news about Ginny, how would you react to it? How would it affect you? Ruth?
I feel like I would be just plain out angry because I wouldn't be mad at Ginny because she didn't know any better because she was possessed.
Okay. Good. Calling someone else.
Alicia.
I would be like surprised but upset that it happened to Ginny, and I'd just be surprised and upset that she did it.
Okay. Calling someone else. Would you be angry with Ginny?
No, be angry that that happened.
Okay. Calling someone else.
I kind of like agree with the not actually. I was not. I kind of suspected it because she was like at in chapter 16. She had something. She was at the Gryffindor table and she was going to tell her something.
Mm-hmm.
First seen it letter, so it's kind of obvious she was hiding something.
There have been clues throughout the book in earlier chapters even where it might just be a line about Ginny was nervous or Ginny looked this way. And it's kind of woven through. If you were to go back and just read for those little tiny moments, you would see that since really kind of quite early on in the book, since they got back to Hogwarts, there are these little hints and signs that something's not right with Ginny. But we're not looking for those, so we overlook them. And now, again, we get to the end. If we were to go back and look, we were like, oh my God, how did I not know that it was Ginny? I knew I should have known. Look at all these little clues and hints. Piper, call in one more person. I'm more interested in hearing your guys' questions than going over mine.
I mean, I'm pretty mad at James. Who opens a diary that they know nothing about and they never grabbed it for and they just randomly got it? And then it starts writing it, and if it writes back, I would have got rid of it to begin with.
Okay, so maybe Ginny holds some responsibility. She made some bad choices.
I didn't know you did.
All right, why is Tom Riddle so interested in Harry? Why, John?
Because he survived the attack when he's called Lord Voldemort that killed his parents, but he wants to know how Harry survived it all.
Very good. He wants to know how Harry, and then you kind of answered the other question. And these are all things we spoke about. What other name is Tom Riddle better known as? We know that it is Lord Voldemort. Do you guys know what an anagram is?
No.
An anagram, does anybody? Rylan, do you know what an anagram is?
I think I do.
Yeah. What is it?
Like,
No. An anagram, Tom Marvolo, I think that's how you spell.
Something, you use the letters for something and then you make them into something else.
Yes, you can take his name, Tom Marvolo Riddle, and you can rearrange the letters. Okay, and I'll do this in another color so you can see it.
oh, I already know.
So I, A, M, L, O, R, D, V, O, L, D, E, M, O, R, T. You can take all the letters in his name, Tom Marvolo Riddle, and you can rearrange them to spell out a new sentence that says, I am Lord Voldemort. That's what an anagram is. So, what does Fawkes bring to Harry, Michelle?
The sorting hat.
Good. Did you have a question
Yeah.
about anagrams?
No. Just a question about, like,
Okay.
so, it kind of backtracks to the first book.
Okay.
Wasn't Voldemort a different person in the first book and now he's Tom Riddle?
Well, he was always Tom Riddle. Do you want to answer it, Jane? Go for it.
So he was always Tom Riddle, but he just
Like 4 different people.
he's just Tom Riddle. He just used Professor Quirrell to help him get stronger because he couldn't use his own body.
Right. In the magic world, remember, this is a fantasy, so things can happen that can't happen in the real world. And so when Harry originally as a baby got the spell cast on him, Lord Voldemort no longer had like a physical body anymore. It was only like a small piece or soul was left of him, but so it could live attached on other people. And so that's kind of that's the Voldemort we see in book 1. Is he's not strong enough to have his own body, so he has to like kind of be like a parasite and attach himself to Professor Quirrell, who is like a servant for him, which is kind of giving him a host body. But then at the end of book 1, Quirrell is dead, and once again, Voldemort's soul, or whatever is left of him, is left to be out there.
And now Tom Riddle has,
But remember, we're seeing Tom Riddle from 50 years ago, because this is a memory.
so like when he was 16.
All right. Do you have a question, or you guys want to answer the next question? We'll go through mine, and then we'll get to all yours. All right. What does Fawkes bring Harry? We already know this. What does Harry tell Tom saved him? This was an important one. What does Harry tell Tom saved him when Voldemort attacked him as a baby? Alicia?
His mom.
One word.
Love.
Love. If you were Harry, how would you deal with Tom and the Basilisk? I think you guys have better questions. I'm going to kind of not do all of these because I want to hear your guys' questions, and I want to go back to Voldemort. We know how Fawkes does that. These are lots of level 1s. How does... Oh, here's a good one. All right, so we know what happened to Gilderoy. Let's start with that one. What happens to Gilderoy at the end of this chapter? Ruth?
Gilderoy Lockhart, memory charm backfired on him.
And he's lost his memory now. So here's the question, guys. Do you feel bad about what happened to Lockhart? Do you feel bad for him? And remember, last reading we were talking about how awful he was.
How we feel about him.
Right? And now it's how do you guys feel bad for him now that he's the one that lost his memory? Jasmine?
I don't, just about what he deserves, and he probably deserves more, but
Calling someone else. Okay, Jasmine says, I don't feel bad. He got what he deserves.
Casey, I just feel a little bad for him.
I mean, no one deserves to lose their memory.
Okay, keep sending it on to someone else. When you're done talking, send it on.
I don't feel bad for him at all because, yeah, he was doing that to all sorts of people, and now he just, you know, he deserves it.
Okay? Maybe a couple more. You call on them.
I don't feel bad for him at all. I think he deserves that because he was a fraud. So
Okay?
deserves that.
Get going on the other side of the room. Maybe two more people.
Hey. I sort of feel bad for him, but I think he got what he deserved. Michelle.
No, I did not feel bad for him because he put all these other memory charms on other people, and I hate him, so it doesn't really matter. So.
All right, that's a good one to end on. Michelle hates Lockhart. If you were Harry and Ron, guys, if you were Harry or Ron, would you tell anyone about what happened in the chamber? Who would you tell? And, I mean, what would you tell them? If you were Harry or Ron, would you tell anybody about what happened in the chamber? And basically, who would you tell? What would you tell them? Justina, would you tell them the whole story? What would you tell? And would you tell anyone?
I would Harry and Ron. I would tell someone about what happened in the chamber, and the person I would tell would be Professor McGonagall because, well, she could have, well, after what happened, I think maybe Dumbledore would be coming back. He might be, but
Okay.
if he does, then Professor McGonagall can tell Dumbledore what happened.
Well, you could possibly tell McGonagall with the hopes that the news about the truth that comes out, they would allow Dumbledore to return.
Yeah.
Maybe calling someone else. Quick. You got 4 minutes until lunch.
John.
Well, I think I would tell McGonagall because, like, and the head of Cornelius Fudge. And, like, I want the people to come back.
Okay, keep going. Calling someone else.
Violet.
I mean, Harry and Ron, I'd tell whoever asked, but they probably wouldn't tell the same thing because, you're never going to tell someone the same thing you told someone else. It's not normal.
Would you embellish the story at all a little bit, or would you actually? I mean, it's pretty. Hey, I killed a giant snake. I destroyed the greatest dark wizard ever in the history of the world. Once again, now for the third time. Oh, I also saved, an 11-year-old girl. I found the Chamber of Secrets. I've done all these things. It's even without embellishing. It's pretty unbelievable, isn't it?
And then you don't include Ron. For a 12-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was close to death. I was dying. I was saved by a phoenix. You know what I would do? I'd tell everyone.
Man, I'll stand up when they're eating lunch or something and just tell everybody the whole entire story.
This is the fishing story. When you go fishing and you catch a fish this big, but when you come back and you tell the story, I caught a fish, it was this big. Right? This story already is this big. I'd be telling everybody this story. All right, Michelle, whoever said the last one, Rylan, call on one or two more people, and then I want to hit this last question.
I would probably, I would tell McGonagall, and then maybe Hagrid and Dumbledore would come back because he admitted to lying about it.
Mm-hmm. Good, calling someone else.
So people are probably gonna want to know about it.
You think Ginny would?
Yeah.
She's afraid. Well, that's going to lead to my next question. Ginny's afraid she's about to be expelled. So, because when we look at this, Ginny doesn't come off as being. And yeah, Ginny in her head, she's like, I did it. I'm the one that wrote in the diary. I killed the chickens. I wrote the message on the wall. Yes, I was possessed by Voldemort, but Ginny in her 11-year-old brain is like, I did all this stuff.
I wouldn't add that.
So you would tell the whole story, but leave out the Ginny stuff?
Yeah.
All right, you got to call in one more person, and then we'll ask this last question.
I would tell Donegal and try to get Dumbledore and Hagrid back, but then I would, or if Dumbledore was coming back anyway, I would just tell Dumbledore.
Okay. All right, we could keep talking about this, and if you guys want to, we can continue to use lunchtime to answer your questions. In your opinion, should Ginny receive a punishment? What should happen to her? And should she be expelled? These are kind of like all, you can think about these questions and however you want an answer. But basically, what should happen to Ginny? Ginny thinks she's going to get expelled. Should she get punished at all? And if so, what should happen to her? All right, I'll start with Frank.
Faster and faster I run from the scene. Can my look not find me ever? Has my heart stopped beating?
Be fed to Aragog?
My heart stopped
Calling someone to respond.
fighting against every fiber in me. Did I live up to my word or have my heart stopped beating? Have my heart
So no punishment? All right, calling someone else. Calling someone else then. Okay, whatever Hogwarts version of detention is, we know that they do have detention. They usually have to go into like the forest and do some job or answer fan mail or polish the trophy room. Calling someone. All right, she was being controlled. All right, listen, right there, that is the bell, and so I've got to shut down our video here. Listen, you guys have one last thing you have to do. What is the last thing you need to do, Frank? You guys need to make sure that you go to your classwork tab and you upload a picture of your notes. We're not going to have a quiz. We're not going to have a summary of these notes or of this chapter. So if we have additional time, we can come back, Parker, and we can continue discussing the chapter, and we can really focus in on your questions. We can focus in on that interesting stuff that I read about Voldemort and his father on page 398. I want to get into that more. Okay? So right now, you guys take a second, get a picture of your notes.